Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about real football players this week, and we have a real live football player joining us. It's Jacob Morley, Jacob Westorf. This is the Gold Zone Game on Wisconsin. Let's roll. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Jordan Love era. It's official. It's not real until I have the quarterback's jersey. So now I do. That means it's official. Jordan Love is going to be the starting quarterback of the Green Bay Packers in 2023. We have no trade yet. When one happens, who knows? A lot of different things going on. We know Elijah Moore will not be in the trade. Elijah Moore was traded today to the Cleveland Browns, so we can safely stop discussing those sorts of things and kind of run from there. Welcome to the show, guys. I'm Jacob Westendorf. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter right down there at Jacob Westendorf. And I'm joined by my pal, as he likes to say, Jacob Morley. You can follow him on Twitter at Jacob Morley. We're real creative with our Twitter handles, and we are awaiting the arrival of our guest tonight. And if you guys are not familiar with who our guest is tonight, it's Cody Mauch from North Dakota State football, a draft prospect. He's going to play offensive line in the NFL, which means he's a real football player. If you want to learn more about the offensive linemen, on the bottom line right down in here, check it out, Green Bay Draft Guide. You can get one for $8.99. You can follow it, draftguide.gumroad.com/i/Green Bay/23/draftmiss. That'll get you one for a couple of bucks. And $8.99 will get you just that. So we are working through some technical issues to get Cody in here, and we'll kind of run from there. And we'll kind of figure that out. So we're just working through that. And until we get there, like I said, I'm with Jacob Morley. Jacob, what's in the draft guide? What's interesting about that? Maybe a couple things that we talked about on Pack-A-Day this week.
We talked a lot about thresholds this week, and we talked about the Packers threshold specifically for the wide receiver position, which has been interesting. It was interesting that Xavier Hutchinson was a guy that we mentioned, and then turns out Goody was at the Iowa State Pro Day. Maybe to watch Anthony Johnson Jr., maybe to watch Xavier Hutchinson. Another guy was Dontavion Wicks, who went out and qualified himself with a better 40. And guess what? There were two scouts there predominantly talking to Dontavion Wicks. So there are some really good things.
Did you really just bury the lead? Where was Brian Gutekunst today?
Oh, he was at Ohio State.
He was at the worst university in the United States of America. However, I made the joke that he was watching Zach Harrison and Paris Johnson, which maybe he was. Paris Johnson's awesome. Zach Harrison seems to be an edge that could fit with the Packers. But I do know somebody pointed out to me that he talked to Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Jackson Smith and Jigba fits every single threshold that the Packers typically like. So I cannot believe that you didn't go with that, because if it were up to Jacob Morley, the Packers have 10 picks in this year's draft. All of them would be receivers, is the way that I believe that would go. So we're working through that. You mentioned Dontavion Wicks. There's a couple of different questions that kind of work through a few different things here too. So I'm thinking here on like Dontavion Wicks. You mentioned Rashee Rice is another guy who might be a potential candidate. Jonathan Mingo's kind of making his name and his waves around here. But that's a couple things. That's the news that we have going for the week. It's kind of in the lead up, I guess, to the Rodgers trade. I don't know where we're at. I would imagine the deadline is the draft. I'm not going to talk about leverages or leverage and all that other stuff when it comes to the Rodgers trade, because I don't want to say I don't care, because that's not true, but I'm just tired of talking about it. Like, when it happens, it happens. The trade compensation for the Packers, I don't believe, is going to be like vastly different if Gutekunst waits or if Joe Douglas waits. I know I'm tired of talking to Jets fans that think they're going to get Aaron Rodgers for a 4th-round pick and a conditional 6th in 2024. It's not going to be that, but it's also not going to be 2 firsts and Sauce Gardner, for example. But yeah, that's kind of the case there, and we're just kind of all waiting. So that's where we're at. And let's talk about the offensive line though, Jacob, because this is where the real men play, and these are where real football players strap on their shoulder pads and buckle their chin straps and go to work. So trying to figure out what I really want to start with on the offensive line is the need level, because we were talking about this pre-show. David Bakhtiari is back, and he will be back at least for 2023. Yosh Nijman was tendered at a second-round tender for 2023, so we'll see if somebody decides to trade for him or not. And then, of course, Zach Tom is the other guy, and they have some younger guys, Caleb Jones, Rasheed Walker, Royce Newman played some tackle for them. Yeah, God bless Royce, but no thank you. If he's playing tackle, something really, really bad has happened. And in last year's case, it wasn't even something really bad happened. I don't know who made that decision, but it wasn't a good one to start the year with. It's still crazy to me, Morley, that we started the year last year. Jake Hansen and Royce Newman were the team starting right guard and right tackle. And that only lasted one game because Elton Jenkins came back and then played right tackle. And theoretically, Elton Jenkins is another guy who could play tackle in a pinch. Yeah. But what I'm thinking on for you here is, Morley, what do you think the need level is on this offensive line for them to add a offensive tackle? Because I have a maybe not mainstream take on that.
Well, we talked about this pre-show, and it's like, man, if someone like Paris Johnson is sitting there at 15 or 13, that you take a guy, you just take him. And you say that's our right tackle, and it's just one of those things that you look back on it now and be like, like Yosh or Zach Tom or good options at right tackle or left tackle or whatever. But that's a blue chip type guy at that position that could play there for a decade and a half for you. And I think at that point you just say we figure it out. Like we were talking about, this team, if they love one thing, it is depth at the offensive line and the way this team has been set up. And I mean, look at the way Bakhtiari has been the last 3 years. I think Goody said, hey, we think we're over the hump. But as far as that, I kind of lost my train. Oh, Goody said he thinks he's over the hump as far as Bakhtiari, right? And thinks like his knee, it's not an issue anymore. And if that's the case, that's great. I hope that's right. But just the history of this guy with his knee having the issues in the past, and you don't know what his longevity will look up like. You just don't. So you might have Zach Tom as your left tackle of the future that you like, but I don't think you pass up on a blue chip guy in the top 15 in a pick that you hopefully you're not picking in that area super often. So I would not be shocked at all if they went that route.
Yeah, and my take on it is I don't know if Zach Tom's a left tackle, and I don't know if he's a tackle in general. True North Packers fans in here, one of our OGs had asked, Zach Tom to center, and I think that's a possibility. Gutekunst did say in his media availability that he felt during the draft that his best spot, this being Zach Tom's, was at center. And in order to do that, well, then you obviously can't play tackle if you're going to play center primarily with the team. And Zach Tom might be their starting center as soon as 2023. I don't think so about that, but we will table that discussion for the time being because we have our special guest. We have figured out whatever was going on.
Technology, man. Technology.
Technology stuff. I appreciate you, though. That is Cody from North Dakota State Football, the Bison. Cody, you can follow him on Twitter at Cody Tudd. Cody, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us tonight and walking through all that.
Yeah, shoot. Glad we got that all figured out.
Hey, yeah, Cody, before we even start, I was directed to ask you a couple specific questions by one Zach Willis. He said he would like to know your take on pumpkin pie blizzards from Dairy Queen.
Yeah, we just have a story that happened together. I'm a big pumpkin pie guy, so I went and got one day. I got a blizzard, and he like tried scaring me when I got back to the apartment, and he kind of knocked it out of my hand, so made a huge mess. So that's kind of our inside joke.
And then he also wants you to tell the people who's better at Madden, you or him.
I don't know why you guys even like this guy.
Oh, Willis. So that's our good buddy Zach Willis. Another Another North Dakota guy. Zach grew up in West Fargo. I don't know if you know, Cody. I grew up in Valley City, North Dakota, actually.
Okay.
And you're a Hankinson kid.
Yep.
And tell the people, Cody. So Hankinson, are you guys still? Are you 9-man football now, or is that okay?
Still are. Yep.
So when you were in high school, people, depending on where you're at, I live in Kansas City now. Smaller schools are like 8-man. So your backstory is you came to North Dakota State as a tight end prospect, and that's kind of been the story on you at the combine. You've got the red hair, you've got the teeth, all that stuff. But that's the other thing is like this kid. If you look at his progression at North Dakota State, here's this young tight end that grew into a NFL offensive lineman. And so my question for that is, for a 9-man football, did you play tight end, or is that essentially you were playing offensive line and they just gave you a cuter number?
No, I played tight end. I was like, we'd split our tight ends out a bunch. So I was split out a lot, on the ball a lot, but yeah, I played tight end.
Wow. And that's what you hear from guys. I've heard it from other than just Zach. I've heard it from other guys that you've played with that they say you still have some of the best hands on the team. Is that a fact?
Other than snapping the ball at the Senior Bowl, I don't even remember the last time they let me touch a football. So, I don't know if that's true anymore.
And then we won't be seeing any tackle eligible plays coming up anytime soon.
Well, hey, no, let me retract what I said now.
Get him in the end zone. Get him in the end zone. Yeah. So Cody, you're on this journey, to the draft, and growing up in Hankinson's a small town in North Dakota. I know at NDSU last year they did, they let you go home, and I know Hankinson kind of did this whole deal for you, which is really cool. I think I've met your cousin before at Sioux Falls last year at the Summit League tournament. There's a lot of mocks from that area, and it's pretty cool to see kind of how North Dakota has really just embraced you. But as a small town kid going through all of this, I mean, what is that like? I mean, you play. It's not that North Dakota State is some tiny school. You've played under bright lights at that school, but it's got to be something different stepping onto that field at Mobile with truly the best of the best in college football. So can you kind of just walk us through what was that experience like for you, just to kind of walk out there for the first time? And was there a moment in your head, after that first snap where you're like, okay, like I can do this. I can play with these guys?
Yeah, it was cool being able to meet the guys first, meet a lot of the people, a lot of the people just because they're bigger name guys as it is. But I think really that first snap, able to ease into it a little bit. You kind of understand how the speed's going to be, how everything's a little bit faster. Everyone's a little bit maybe better than what I was used to. But I think just the first snap was good just to get, like I said, understand the speed of things, kind of ease into it. And I think after that, I felt great, kind of anywhere. And, you don't really have much time to think about that either. Like, you're installing a brand new NFL playbook, and you're playing with guys you've never played before. And I was also playing a completely different position than what I was used to. So I had a lot on my mind. I wasn't really thinking too much about the other guy at that point.
And that's something they bring up about you as a prospect now, right? You hear all the main guys talk about, hey, this Cody Mauch kid, he played left tackle at North Dakota State, but legitimately could play all 5 spots in the NFL. And is that something NFL teams have talked to you about, or have you gotten any kind of vibe that, hey, I'm going to be playing guard or center, or is it kind of like teams are like, we're just going to take this kid and figure it out?
I'm sure that's what the case is. I bet each team has a plan for how they would use me, because every team I talk to is a little bit different. Some teams might even see me as a tackle. Some teams will see me as a guard on either side. Some teams will see me as a center. So really every team's a little bit different. So I think each team probably has a different way they like to use me.
We got Cody Mauch here from North Dakota State. I'm Jacob Westendorf. This is Jacob Morley here at the Gold Zone. Cody, my question, you just mentioned some of those meetings and everything like that. I'm not asking you to tell me like every single question that they ask in detail or anything like that, because I don't want to get you in trouble, but peel back that curtain for some of us a little bit. What does that meeting process look like? Is it like because like some people say like, oh, we met with this dude at the combine, but that can also be as simple as, hey, Cody, I'm this guy. I'm from the Carolina Panthers, just to throw a team's name out there. Like it can be that simple. But like your formal meetings, like are they really going back through like questions you didn't really expect or anything crazy like that? Or is it just like simple to the point? Let's talk football. What do you like to do? And let's get out of here.
Those formal interviews for the most part were we'd throw on film. We'd watch some of that team's film. We'd do a couple surface level questions just because you don't have much time for. I mean, if you let an O-line coach get in the film room, we're going to be watching film the entire meeting. Yeah. So it's a lot of film of ours and theirs and surface level interview questions. But then we get to like the informal interviews and you get like a lot more like in detail interview process, which was fine, which is cool.
So then you go through everything like that. You get into everything. You played at North Dakota State. Morley mentioned, you've obviously played under some bright lights and everything like that. It's crazy because, before I met like some of these guys, I had never heard of North Dakota State. I'm pretty well casual on that side. I mean, this was 10, 15 years ago at this point now, but you'd think like for an FCS program, you just wouldn't really think of that as you guys have become like it's your own little NFL draft factory. I think you've had a guy in the draft every year for at least the last 5 years that's gotten drafted. And some of them, I mean, Carson as high as number 2, Trey Lance as high as number 3, and then some other guys lower towards the end of it. How is that type of program that you're playing in prepared you for getting into the NFL, the culture and everything that goes into playing for the Bison?
Yeah, it's there's a lot of things that go into it that help prepare guys in our program for the next level. Like the complexity of our playbook, just how much we do is a big thing. It's not as much of a jump, I don't think, from like college to the NFL in terms of the playbook, because we do a lot of stuff, have a lot of stuff in, and just the way we go about our business is very, very business-like. It's a well-run program, player-led program too. Like the players are the ones keeping each other accountable. So you get a lot of mature people on the team and a lot of good leaders, and that just helps guys grow up a little bit quicker and just mature quicker, so they're kind of ready for that next step.
And Cody, watching you play, it's a lot of people aren't going to be as familiar. One, because a lot of people don't just turn on offensive lineman film. There is a big probably gap for smart offensive line people to educate people. But watching you play and covering that team myself the last 3 years and getting to go to those games and watching you in between snaps, you play with a level of joy that I think a lot of people don't necessarily maybe understand. I know you kind of went viral at the Montana State game where you the sliding first down. That was kind of a whole year thing for you. That's something, and then this last year, you block a guy into the ground and you'd get up flapping your wings or doing something, is that something that you're just having that much fun, or is it almost like a mental game for you? Like, yeah, I just put you in the dirt and now I'm going to get up and act like I'm just a big kid having fun, like not thinking anything of it.
It really is just loving to play football, like the joy that I get from just playing football, being so comfortable in there, having played here at NDSU for a while, just really comfortable. And it's just, I just like playing football, really. And all of that being said, it kind of does lead into the second point where, I mean, it's got to be pretty, annoying or frustrating to guys when you get blocked and then guys are just kind of, I mean, I wouldn't say goofing off, but you know what I mean? After just doing all these weird things, like it's got to be pretty frustrating to see a guy just flapping his wings or whatever after. So it probably could be part of it too, but it's not intentional.
I do remember, I think it was the Incarnate Word game where, there's the big play that you're, running down the field, and what they had a player that had been kind of jawing at you a little bit. And that was kind of the point where it's like, yeah, this game's over, like they're going to win this thing after that. And do you get a lot of guys that kind of chirp at you because of the style of play that you have? I mean, if you're not familiar with Cody's game, you're a nasty football player. Like you enjoy the physicality of the game. You enjoy, blocking a guy 10 yards down the field and finishing your blocks. Like that is something that's very apparent that relish in the game. So is that something that you do have a lot of guys chirping at you and kind of trying to talk to you?
Not too much. A little bit. There's at least probably a guy on every team who they just love to talk, and I just seem to be a guy that they love to talk to sometimes. But it's usually never the guys I'm actually going against. It's like a corner or safety or someone who's doing that. But I don't really get a whole lot of that from guys up front. We're usually pretty friendly, honestly, to each other for the most part during the games. It's not really all that much kind of chirping back and forth.
Got it.
Interesting. Yeah, just because I would think you guys, like, your guys' job is to hit each other literally on every single play, that maybe letting them know, or maybe it's I don't know, maybe it's like the inherent like respect that you have for each other off of that, because you know all of those things. I mentioned earlier about the culture of everything like that. Now, have you met with the Packers? Do you know anything about any of those guys, Coach Butkus or Steno or any of those guys? Have they talked to you at all?
I've had a couple meetings with the Packers. Yep.
Okay. So what is that, again, what has that like been like? What do you know about the Packers? What's your, impression of them? Because it's kind of similar to North Dakota State in a way, like small town, rallies around the team, green and yellow, for God's sake. That's obviously inherently built in. One of your former teammates is part of the team now with Christian Watson. Just what's that been like? And what do you know about the Packers?
Yeah. It's just like you said, there's a lot of similarities in our program. I mean, everything down to the colors, like small town, Midwest, just so much like history within the programs, going back to years and years ago. The history runs deep, and the culture is just something that doesn't really seem to change at either school or program. It's cool. It's cool. It's just, I just think in general, it's neat to just growing up, watching Packer games, really any team. And now you're kind of having talks with some of the guys about potentially being on their team. It's just a pretty cool experience.
And you're from a smaller town in North Dakota. What's the primary, like, everybody I know from North Dakota is a Packers fan, but that doesn't mean that's like the normal team out there. What's the primary team that you guys follow in the NFL and where you're from? For
the most part, it's either the Vikings or the Packers.
So which side did you fall on? This is a very important question.
I don't think you're going to like my answer. I grew up a Vikes fan.
So let me think. Cody, are you even old enough to remember them losing the 98 championship game?
I was born in 99.
So no. Oh, no, wow.
Man.
That's incredible. Okay. Yeah. So, wow, you can't even, you're not even old enough to remember. So the worst football game you've ever watched, that maybe if you still cared at that point, was probably when they got 41-7 by or 38-7 by the Eagles.
Yep. That, even back to the NFC championship against the Saints, a game like that.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. The Favre game. How can I forget the Favre game?
Yeah. And I was younger at that point. Didn't really, I was probably only 10 at the time. I think it was 2009, but yeah. Oh shoot. There's been a lot of heartbreaks with the Vikes.
Well, when the Packers draft you, then you got to go through an exorcism or something.
I know. I need to get all that out of
me. Morley, go ahead. We got time for one more. We'll get Cody out of here.
Well, I just, speaking of, we were talking about the program and talking about Christian, and you guys probably would have been there for a long time together, right? I mean, he was there for 5 years. You're there for 5. It was cool to see him back and speaking to the program, back at multiple games this last year for you guys, and seeing him on the sidelines. Is he someone that you keep in contact with at all, or someone that you've spoken with?
I guess I would talk to him when he would come back for those games, because we were in the same recruiting class. 2017 we came in together. I haven't really talked to him personally, but he's a guy who every time I see him, he's just fun to catch up with, because we've been through a lot together.
Yeah. And last question is there anyone on North Dakota State's football team that you want to shout out that you don't think is getting enough NFL draft love, that could potentially make a jump there next year?
For next year's team,
or even this group, the group that you're coming out with now.
I'd like to shoot out every single guy who's trying to do it, but one guy in particular is Noah Gindorf, our tight end.
Yep.
Been through a lot just with, a broken bone, comes back for another year to try to just get some more film, another year, and then he breaks a bone again. Just been through a lot. and he's still a great football player. I hope a lot of teams aren't really turned off just because he's had a couple injuries and just know that he can still play. Like Noah's definitely a guy who I would, I hope everything works out for him.
Yeah, that's a great one. And there's multiple guys. I know you guys got your pro day coming up on the 29th. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
So yeah, so we'll be looking for you on that, Cody. We wish you nothing but the best. Can't wait to root for you in the NFL, buddy.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Cody, appreciate having you. We'll see you again, hopefully in some more green and yellow here come April.
Yeah, right. Yeah, hopefully. Well, appreciate the time.
Take care, Cody. Appreciate it. It was Cody Mauch from North Dakota State. Like I showed earlier, you guys can follow him on Twitter. He's at Cody Tudd. Really interesting guy. I mean, I had never met him before. I wasn't overly familiar. It's just kind of with his game from having watched him play. I don't appreciate that he was a Vikings fan, but that's
he looks like a literal.
He Viking. Looks like yes. I was gonna say something like that, but I don't know him like that, and he could punch me in the face and probably kill me in one punch. But interesting conversation there. That was nice to hear that he's had a couple conversations with the Packers.
Well, and let me tell you. So we talked about thresholds with the wide receiver position.
Yep.
Wide receiver, I feel like I know what the Packers like, and I feel very confident. The other position that I would rank close to that is offensive line. Cody is everything they like in the offensive line.
Yeah, he is Packers offensive line. Like you could plug him into a Packers jersey and you wouldn't even know the difference.
You wouldn't, and just not even style of play. Like, I mean, his style of play, like he would be a fan favorite almost immediately. When I was talking about the joy that he plays with, I mean, it really is like you or I, if we were physically gifted enough to play the sport, like how much joy we would play it in. Like, I don't think he takes for granted playing the game. And Packers fans, I mean, he's going to be embraced by whatever, fan base gets him. But you watch, and you look at, so the Packers care a ton about 3-cone and shuttle. And there is a number that you need to get to. Cody blew him out of the water. Absolutely.
Where could they find that number, Morley? Do you have any idea?
You could find that in the Green Bay Draft Guide, where if you have not pre-ordered it already, you're going to want to do that, because more so than me just talking about it, it's right in front of you. With greens are good, yellows are close, reds are bad. Cody's green across the board. Everything that they love, athletic profile, he's got. And here's the other thing that the Packers love. Did you play left tackle in college?
Mm-hmm.
Cody did. So he's one of those guys too that, I think the one real knock on him that people are projecting him to guard is, he doesn't have the 36-inch arms or whatever, whatever the heck it is. Neither does Bakhtiari, right? Neither does Zach Tom. And the Packers seem to take these tackles, and guys are like, you have to play guard. You have to play guard. Your arms aren't long enough. Bulaga was another guy like that. And they get projected to guard, and then they just stick him at tackle, and they don't get beat. And they're like, why we got to move this guy to guard? He's not getting beat.
He's
right.
Really
so
good, right.
Yeah. So the Packers have had a ton of success with that. We were talking about it pre-show, Jacob. If the Packers end up, who knows? Maybe they end up with pick 42, 43, and 45. If that happens, I would not be shocked if Cody is one of those 3 picks. Just because I think that's the range that he could go in. I also wouldn't be surprised if he snuck into the end of round 1, just because of that. I think that's the type of player he is. But yeah, cool guy. Appreciate him coming on. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and there's been some, I'll call them whispers because I don't like to pretend like I'm any more important than I really am, but just some stuff that I've heard that, sneaking into the end of round 1, or maybe that guy who is like the very first pick of the second round kind of thing, which is, I always call that like a second first-round pick for some guys, but that's certainly a possibility. I enjoyed him. I had somebody, I can't remember who it was in here, said that he reminded him of Josh Sitton. And I would say like his appearance was like Josh Sitton with TJ Lang's hair. Like that's what he looked like to me. I think that the physicality is something this Packers offensive line could certainly use. We've talked before about kind of how they're trying to build this offense, but like it doesn't necessarily fit with like what the vision is, so to speak. Like they want to be a running team, but John Runyon can't, move guys any single time that he wants to. The right tackles last year, neither one of those guys were road graders in the run game. Like their best run blocking right tackle last year was Royce Newman. And like We kind of know the
Yes.
deal with Royce Newman on that.
Yeah.
Josh Myers is inconsistent. You kind of go Elton and Bakhtiari. I think you feel pretty good about those two over there. But, we were talking before Cody came on, and I cut everything off because obviously we wanted to get Cody in here. Was, Green Bay, the need that they have as an offensive tackle. We start talking about some of the guys they have. Caleb Jones, interesting body, obviously had a very interesting camp. He's kind of planet theory guy. There's only so many people in the world that are that big that you're trying to make into an offensive lineman. Rasheed Walker was a guy like that. Luke Tenuta is a guy that they claimed off waivers and rostered the entire season. Sean Ryan's an interior player, but other guys like that. My take on the tackle position is they either need a long-term left tackle or a long-term right tackle. And I don't know which one just yet. And frankly, it's possible that the answer is both. But I know for sure that they need at least one of those things. You said Paris Johnson. That's a run the card up type. Number one, if he gets past Chicago, then the Bears are the dumbest organization. Well, I shouldn't say that, but
Well, they are, but
they are, but like he should be a Chicago Bear in my opinion.
yeah.
Just based on where that is. But if you get to, if he gets to 13 or 15 or wherever Green Bay ultimately ends up picking in the first round, that's a run the card up type of player for something like that. If Green Bay is able to get a Broderick Jones or someone like that for this offensive tackle class, early, I don't think that I was talking about this earlier, I do like Jackson Smith and Jigba, but I think every year we almost get like sucked into this idea that who's the best available receiver? And that's who Green Bay needs to take. This Packers team, this is a retooling, resetting, whatever you want to call it kind of year. And they have a lot of needs, both short and long-term with this team to where, it's not like it was in 2020 when they took Jordan Love, where it was like, man, just take a receiver. The rest of the roster is ready to roll. That's not what this team is. And that's not what this team is going to be. Now, do I think the Packers can be a playoff team and all that stuff next year? Absolutely. We'll get to that conversation at a later date. But to just assume that Green Bay oh man, if they don't take a receiver, the draft is a failure. What the old Kay Adams quote I remember from Good Morning Football was, I will laugh if they don't take a receiver in the first round. And they took Eric Stokes. And it was just like, yeah, their biggest need was corner. It makes perfect sense. Like,
Hey,
of course it makes sense. And the two other guys in that conversation were Rondale Moore and Elijah Moore. Rondale Moore is a role player. Elijah Moore is already on his second team.
Yeah. And you know what, Kay Adams, who I love. Kay Adams is.
I do too. That's what sticks out.
The Packers don't give a crap.
No,
they don't care.
And you know what? I'm happy they don't, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and they should.
Because if they did, they would have never had Aaron Rodgers in the first place if they cared about stuff like that. But the point I'm getting at here is Bakhtiari, to me, starting over there, he's a guy who, if this is like a tryout year for him to some degree, like, are you over the hump? And if you are, can you stay healthy for an entire season? If you can, I think he's an extension candidate, and I think he should be. Like, David Bakhtiari is their best player on offense when he's healthy and on the field. And for everybody to be like, oh, that knee, you can't trust that knee, you can't do that knee. Once he was finally back, and I know it was a frustrating road for the fans, even more frustrating for Bakhtiari, once he was back, one game because of his knee. That's it. Yep. So, again, if he gets hurt and it's his knee again, that's fine. Then I understand wanting to move on. Because at that point, and also true, like if the Packers, like if they go 3-14 or something stupid like that next year, then yeah, you probably don't need to be investing that much in a position like that. On the right side, this is where things get a little interesting because Yosh Nijman, to me, I've always said he's like the R in war. He's a replacement level tackle, which has a ton of value. We've seen that play out over the last, 2 seasons where he was playing left tackle for a decent portion of it. He's going head to head with Nick Bosa. Like I remember that first game in San Francisco where they're like, oh, Bakhtiari's not going to play. And now Elton can't play either. I'm like, Bosa's going to baptize this dude. Yeah. And like he didn't, he held his own, which some of that was the Packers and game planning and all that stuff, which kudos to them for that. But they did. And Nijman's done a good job. The problem, and it's not even really a problem because it's a good problem to have with Nijman, is he's tendered. Okay, so this is his last year that he's under team control. So are you going to pay him to be your tackle of the future? Maybe the answer to that is yes. Like maybe Green Bay's plan is to try and get him to an under market extension and plug him in as the left tackle next season when Bakhtiari walks. Or keep him at right tackle. Maybe that's the plan. I don't know. That's kind of thing. If he's not part of your long-term plan, though, the Packers should be trying to explore a trade option. Now, worse comes to worse, and the word worse is being overused here, but he comes back for a season. That's incredibly valuable. He's your starting right tackle or he's your swing tackle. And he's done a good job at both of those things over the last couple of years. And the easiest way to get your new quarterback ruined is to get him hit and get him hit a lot. Zach Tom is like the controversial pick when you get to here. Because some people, our friend Ross Uglum, think he could be the left tackle like tomorrow. I didn't know you thought that too, but
I think Zach Tom's awesome. Yeah. But to your point, sample size pretty small. So
correct.
And so like I get where people are like, if you're just like, woo, we're rolling with Zach Tom as our left tackle, I'd be like, you better be right. Like I think he's really good, but you better be right. So
well, my thing on that is like Zach Tom to me next year could be above average at left tackle, like at a ceiling. Bakhtiari is the best one not named Trent Williams. Like, and Trent Williams is a stud, like one of the best players in football, stud. So I don't know. His lower half is really lean, and that's something they can change, obviously, over the course of a couple of years.
Like he's a small guy. Like I would, being at a couple games and being close to him on the field taking pictures. Like he's bigger than us, but he and
Nyman both. Honestly, I remember standing next to Nyman last year on Christmas, and I was just like, his shoulders are just so small.
But to an extent, Bakhtiari is too. Bakhtiari is not the biggest guy in the world either. So,
and they had some bodybuilding to do with him over a couple of years. My thing with him is just, and the thing with Tom is, again, like I said, sample size. I don't know, I don't remember the breakdown of what games he played where and everything like that. The hard part with Tom is I think he's good enough to play tackle. I think his long-term best position, I agree with Brian Gutekunst, is at center. However, I don't think guard is a good spot for him.
I don't either.
Like he really struggled against Buffalo.
He is a guy that, like, let's say they roll with Bach, Elton, Myers, Runyon, Yosh. Like he's a guy that you're like, he's our top backup at 05. And I think that's super valuable. Like, hey, we can win games with him at guard. We can win games with him at center, at tackle. And that is so valuable, right, to have a guy like that. But I just think he's a starter. I think he's one of their best 5 right now. I think they got to find a spot for him. But this is why they have training camp. This is why it'll sort itself out. And the other thing,
that changes. So let me ask you here, like you just said, you think he's one of their best 5. If they draft Paris Johnson at 13, is that still true?
I hope they give him a shot at center. I just hope it's an open competition. I hope Myers doesn't win just because he's a top, 50 draft pick. And I think in your third year, it is an open competition. And I don't think Myers is bad. I don't think Myers is a bad football player. And that's what is nice about the Packers' current offensive line. Say they take Paris Johnson and they start him at right tackle, and say they get, say Sean Ryan, throw that name out there, comes back in and he looks like the player they thought he was in the third round, and he wins the right tackle guard job outright. Or they draft someone, like Zach Tom, who came in last year as a 4th-round pick or whatever he was and played really well. They can do that again. They've proven they're really good at identifying offensive line talent. Okay,
yeah, they have.
At that point, then John Runyon is your top backup, interior line backup with Royce Newman. Like that's people are going to be like, oh, Royce Newman. Royce Newman will be in this league for a long time, guys. He will, because he might be a little bit below average, but that's valuable in the NFL.
Not only that, it's that old Ted Thompson phrase, right? The good Lord only made so many big boys that can move like that, and Royce can move, and like
he could still get better. Yosh didn't really show us anything till his 3rd year.
No, and that was kind of baptism by fire.
We thought he was going to get cut. That's why when he was out there, we're like, this dude got Jordan Love hurt in the preseason, and now we're going to throw him out there against Nick Bosa with Aaron Rodgers, and then lo and behold, he was fine. So I trust the Packers getting these guys ready. I think, and that's why, like, man, if I was another team, I would throw a second at Yosh, and I'd be like, he's been through the Packers system. They developed him. He's going to be a good player. And that's just one thing. You can say whatever you want about the Packers organization. You can say whatever you want about Goody. They're really, really good at identifying and developing offensive line talent. They're not perfect at it, but they're really good at it. And then the other thing too, Jacob, is Runyon is a free agent after this year. And I don't think they want to pay him. I don't. It seems like every year they're trying to replace him, and they just can't because he's just good enough. right? And he's always healthy and he's always available. And that's great.
What was it, 21? I think he got benched after, like, he started that first preseason game, Jordan Love's debut. And he started that first preseason game and he was really bad. To his credit, he bounced back, but he was so bad he got benched. Like, he went from running with the ones all of camp to benched like a week later. And you're right. I think you're right on that standpoint that they don't want to pay him. I think they got enough guys that can kick inside. You know, I think their hope when they drafted Sean Ryan was John Runyon's replacement or Elton Jenkins' replacement, because they thought Elton was going to play tackle, and that's not going to happen. And another possibility that you haven't mentioned, as we talked about center, is Elton Jenkins could be that too. He did a really good job of that. Like, if they got enough guys that can play guard, then, you know, Elton could go play center. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but they have possibilities. And that's to your point that you're getting at with this team is, you know, they don't have like Detroit's offensive line in terms of like one of the best in the league. For like the Philadelphia Eagles, their line was the best in football last year. Or just going back to, like, it's not the Great Wall of Dallas from those Cowboys teams once upon a time. But I can't remember the last time. And I have said before, I don't think the Packers are good enough. Like, they're good enough, but that's not good enough, if that makes sense. On the line of scrimmage, like from center to right tackle, I think they got a lot of questions.
You never are. You're never good enough. You know, like, I think that's the mindset they have too.
Which is a good thing. And what I was saying with them is, I can't remember the last time that the Packers had a really bad offensive line, like a truly bad group on the offensive line. The only thing I could think of, 2018, the year Mike McCarthy got fired, but that was like Byron Bell and Justin McCray and those dudes playing like right guard and everything like that. So that didn't go very well.
Well, and
they didn't have Jenkins. Lane Taylor was.
Credit to Goody coming in and just drafting 3 guys every year and hitting on them, you know. And
from my understanding from the frat boy punter that is everybody's friend now is that Gutekunst is a moron. So shout out, Pat.
The evil genius that is Joe Douglas just traded away a
second round pick,
top 40 pick for a third rounder. 2 years.
It was a pick swap they got a second round pick for him, but they basically dropped 30 spots because they got pick 74 back or whatever.
Yikes.
So yeah, whatever. But that's not the point I was getting at. The point I was getting at was like 2015. I remember that year when Bakhtiari got injured and whoever Balaga didn't play, and like they were starting Josh Walker and Don Barclay at tackle spots. And like, this was one of those weaknesses of Ted Thompson kind of in action, and RIP Ted, I'm not going to that, but it's just like, you know, every year it felt like somewhere in a spot, it's like, if this dude gets hurt, we have an undrafted free agent from this year.
Yeah.
That's good. Like Josh Hawkins is going to play cornerback if Tremont Williams gets hurt, just to throw
Darius Gunter. Yeah.
Sure. Throw your names. Doesn't matter who gets out there, but I can't remember and you know, everybody says, I say this all the time. Everybody says the Packers have been spoiled as far as quarterbacks go. And that is true. Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, back to back. Jordan Love, Morley and I decided before the show that his number will be retired as well. Mm-hmm. So you got those 3 in a row. That's incredible. But left tackle and specifically the left tackle position has kind of been that way for a while as well. First, it was Chad Clifton. Clifton played for as long as he did. You had a little sabbatical in there with Marshall Newhouse, and then it was David Bakhtiari, and that's it since 2000, basically. The Packers, like you said, there are things that you can knock the Packers for and Gutekunst for, but offensive line and just the way that they emphasize that, I don't think is one of them. You know, every year when they pick 3 guys on day 3, I love that shit. Like every year, because then hit on one of them, and you're in a really good spot. You know, and like you said, they haven't, like, too many people think like a day 3 pick has to become like a high level starter for it to be a hit. Like Marquez Valdez-Scantling was a hit as far as a 5th round pick goes. Because
grand slam hit. Are you kidding me? Like,
right.
I get
because
people don't.
Most of the time, what you're looking for when you get a 3rd round pick is like Jeff Janis. Like, is he a stud special teamer? Cool. We are good with that. That is it. Valdez-Scantling, more than that, to his credit, got a second contract for somewhere else. To his credit,
dude, Jonathan Garvin has been a successful 7th round draft pick. Like he's a special teams contributor. and is one of their preferred special teams guys. That's why he's on the roster. Like, that's successful. Ty Summers had a successful career in Green Bay as a 7th-round draft pick. Like that is the thing. And you go look at the picks around those guys. A lot of them aren't in the NFL anymore. Like, a lot of them don't have 3-year NFL careers. A lot of them don't have 4-year NFL careers. Like, it's tough, man. And I think we've talked about this. The draft ends at round 5. Some people say round 4.
I normally say round 4, but 5 is like
I'll hear that argument. Yeah, like, it's kind of true.
Yeah, certainly some truth to that. But that's kind of the take on where the Packers are at the moment as far as their offensive line goes. And I promise you, they're going to pick at least one. They do all the time. I think they've picked one every year since like 2000 or something crazy. Like, Ted Thompson had picked one every single year. Ted Thompson, for the longest time, it was an offensive lineman and a defensive lineman. He took one every single year, except for like one. Gutekunst has taken an offensive lineman, I believe, every year since he became the general manager in 2018. So that's the case there.
Labo just asked, we're going to talk about guys outside the first round. Here's two to whet your appetite here. All right. On as far as offensive linemen that are tackles right now, to maybe, actually, you know what? I'll give you 3. I'll give you 3. Maybe I'll even give you 4. Okay. Blake Freeland.
Away the entire draft guide.
Blake Freeland, BYU.
Great name.
Packer. Big time Packer. Braden Daniels from Utah. Big time Packer. I think Ben already mentioned this guy, but John Ajakwa from Boise State. Packer. Okay. Those are 3 late round guys. Freeland might shoot up just because he tested like an absolute alien. And then, your boy, Ryan Hayes from Michigan.
He's a guard, but
yeah, but he played tackle at Michigan though, didn't he?
Yeah, he was their left tackle this past
year.
So
think
beat the shit out of Zach Harrison.
Yeah, think like John Runyon type, who also played tackle at Michigan. And that's not a bad thing. If he played left tackle for Michigan and tested like this, like the Packers love, Ryan Hayes, like, keep an eye on him. Like, he very well could be a guy that ends up in Green Bay. And I'll say this too, as far as like the thresholds and the metrics last year it was kind of like lean. There was not a ton of guys at some of these spots. And I will say this year's class, I'm going through it, and I've done this the last 4 years. And so this year's class, I'm surprised how many guys are hitting these. I'm like, wow, this guy hits 2. Wow, this guy hits 2. Because that just has not been the case. So the Packers could be doing very much what Lambo Labo just said down here 4 times, and being very happy about who is in this draft class as far as like, wow, there's a lot of options, a lot of guys that we like, and we actually have options as far as players that we want to bring in. So yeah, it's cool, man. I like it.
Yeah, I think that something else that I read somebody say the other day, and I think it was, and I apologize, dude, I'm going to butcher your name, but Sidef Mardish. And again, I'm really sorry if I butchered your name. I've never heard it said. I'd appreciate if you could tell me how to say it, because then I would get it correct. But he basically said that like Gutekunst's draft strategy in general is to attack the strengths of a class for the most part. Because in 2020, one of the strengths of that draft class was the receiver position. The Packers famously did not take any in that draft class. Gutekunst did say afterwards that maybe he didn't necessarily agree that it was this historic draft class. I don't think that's been proven, maybe not historic, but I think he's been proven wrong to some degree on that side of things. But to say that is what I mean is when everybody's like, oh, the Packers, they have these needs at like they need a safety. And like most of my mocks that I've done haven't had safeties in them. I'm like, guys, the safety class kind of stinks. And the guys that, not a lot of guys fit what the Packers typically like on anything. So I don't like, just because you think that they really need one, and they do, doesn't mean Gutekunst is just going to take one just to say he took one. Like, he hasn't done that in years past. But the point I'm making with that is the offensive line, this could be a spot again that Green Bay takes 2 or 3 guys, adds that competition. Brandon Snyder earlier asked like future of Caleb Jones. We talked about Rasheed Walker. We talked about Rashawn Ryan. We've talked about Royce Newman. We've talked about all those guys, but none of them are like roster locks. I don't think, when you talk about guys that are locks to make the roster right now for 2023, it's the starting five. So Bakhtiari, Jenkins, Myers, just in theory, Bakhtiari, Jenkins, Myers, Runyon, Nyman, and then Zach Tom. And then that's about it. Like the Packers could feasibly cut anyone else out of that group. So I think that they like to kind of reinforce that competition in those spots. So this is one of the strengths of this class, I think. And this is a spot where Green Bay could take one as early as 13 or 15, or again, wherever they end up picking in the first round. And they could take one as late as the 7th round and just take 3 guys on day 3, like they've done the last 3 years. I think they've done that 3 years in a row. They've picked 3 guys on the 3rd day of the draft. So, and that's fine. Honestly, like like we've seen it, Morley, we were talking before the show that the Packers played like 10 offensive linemen last year. I know in 2021, they played like all of the dudes that they rostered. It felt like every other week there was a new starting combination. Hopefully next year with Jordan Love, they have a little bit more consistency. The best offensive line, and I had the pleasure of being able to talk with TJ Lang a few weeks ago at Go Long with Ty Dunn and just talking about that group from 2014. And what made that group so special was Bulaga missed 1 game, and that was it. Otherwise, those 5 dudes started every single game that season. And that is so rare, but it's such a boon for your team when that can happen. The Cowboys, the year that they had Dak and Zeke, they're rookies. I think that was the year where all those dudes started all 16 games that year. And maybe not that, but I would settle for maybe from center to right tackle, missing a few games to make sure we got 17 straight games of Elton and Bakhtiari. I would certainly enjoy that for next season. But the continuity on the offensive line, that's something the Packers haven't really had. Quite frankly, Adam Stenovich and Luke Butkus and all those dudes have kind of spit in the face of that idea because they move dudes around like it is kind of musical chairs, saying they truly want to play their best 5. I personally don't agree with that strategy, but the track record for Steno and those guys is who am I to argue, basically, other than maybe one decision here or there, but that's it. I want to thank Cody Mauch for starting. Cody Mauch, my God, for coming by tonight. Appreciate him. Even though he was a Vikings fan, you can follow him. Like I mentioned earlier, he is on Twitter at Cody Tudd. You can follow Jacob Morley. He's at Jacob Morley. And you can follow me. I am at Jacob Westendorf. Next week, we are going to reschedule the tight end conversation, which I know is a big one for a lot of people. The Packers need one or several of those. And this is a really good class. We were supposed to talk about it last week, but we didn't have an opportunity to do that because of the breaking news that happened. It wasn't really news, but whatever, with Aaron Rodgers for last week. So maybe we'll get a trade. Keep your eyes peeled for everything like that. Let me know what you guys think on anything. And grab yourself a draft guide. Tell your friends, tell your family. If you could give me proof that you have purchased a draft guide and asked somebody else to do so, I will give you a shout out live on this show. It's the best I can do for you right now. Maybe there's more. We'll come up with something for next week. But if you can give me proof that you've purchased a draft guide and that you've told somebody else about it, I will give you a shout out live on the show. Morley, if you can get proof that you've gotten someone to purchase it, we'll send you pictures of his nipple. I will let you decide which one.
What's that from?
I don't know. I just, sorry, Sarah. We haven't met and she already hates me. So that's good to know. I appreciate you guys for stopping by. We'll see you next week before I get us in trouble. The FCC is coming to find me. See you then.